Good morning, everybody, and welcome to My EdTech Life. We have a wonderful show for you today, and I'd like to thank every single one of you for joining us this morning and, of course, making us part of your morning. So hopefully you're enjoying a great breakfast, you're having a nice cup of coffee, or if you're overseas, maybe you're having a spot of tea. For all my friends that are visiting or actually watching from the UK, thank you guys, and thank you to all my professional learning family for always being so encouraging and joining us here today. We have an amazing guest. We have Kristina Holzweiss, who's joining us from Long Island, New York, and she is an author and international speaker. So we definitely have some great company here on our show today. So Kristina, thank you for being here, and go ahead and tell our audience members just a little bit more. I just gave a brief intro because I'd like for you to go ahead and share all the amazing things that you're doing.
Well, hi, Alfonso. You are just too kind, and it's so nice to be, talking with you this morning. It's about 10 o'clock here in Long Island, New York, and my kids are in the basement. They're playing, so I've got peace and quiet finally. So it's really nice to sit here and talk with you. I've been an educator. This is my 25th year of teaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Right? How many years have you been teaching?
I've been in education for 15 years now. I did 11 years of teaching and now going on 4 years as an instructional technologist.
Awesome. So I started out as a 7th grade English teacher, and I did that for 9 years. And I went back to school for educational technology. But back then in the year 2000, no one was hiring staff developers and educational technologists. I was the first person to use PowerPoint in my school. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. And I got the little floppy disks, and I put them in all the computers, and the kids would create their review games, and then I would take them out at the end of the period and put them back in. And so in my English class, I had a laptop, but we had no Wi-Fi. Go figure. Yeah, they gave us all laptops, but no Wi-Fi. I had no projector. I was teaching HTML just by having the kids copy a piece of paper and using the TV, like a TV monitor to look at. So I would have my co-teacher teach like grammar or things like that, and I would have kids in small groups sitting around my desk, and I would show them screenshots on my computer of how they would cite their sources when they went home, because we just didn't have Wi-Fi, and I didn't have any computers except my one laptop. So that's how I began. And so I said, I really love using technology. I really love books. And I'm going to say hi to Bruce. And I really love working with teachers, but I don't want to go into administration. So what is there? Well, being a librarian. Well, that's perfect because you have technology, you have books, you connect with all the students in the school, and you connect with faculty. So that's why I became a school librarian for 14 years. And one day I just happened to see there was a position for an ed tech specialist. The original certification that I had in 2000. And I would have stayed at my district because I loved it so much being a school librarian, but I saw it as an opportunity. And so I've been there for 2 years, and this is my first time teaching high school, which is very similar to middle school, very different at the same time.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, when I first started, the transition was I went from high school to elementary. And so, from high school to elementary. But you know what you learn in high school really sets you up and prepares you for elementary. There were a couple of surprises there. But again, I mean, it's just the learning experience is always great. And of course, what may work up there doesn't work down here. And then, of course, you kind of just have to find your own style and find that niche. And, that's great. So that is great that you found that great opportunity. And that's always great because sometimes, I posted up a video yesterday. Sometimes we may block ourselves, or we may think like, maybe is it the right time or not? But, you just got to put yourself out there, and sometimes things definitely work out for the best. And, this is really exciting that I get to hear, about your transition and the way that happened. So that's great. So again, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about here. I know you shared a Wakelet collection with me, and I'm going to go ahead and share that here with our guests as well. And if you'd like to share your screen or share anything, we can, or, I can go ahead and share that here for you. And Bruce says he does miss the floppy disks.
When I was student teaching, I had the big floppy disks, the
Yeah,
real floppy ones.
what I remember in elementary is when I used to do Oregon Trail, and then we'd have the little floppy
Yes.
disk there and pop in Oregon Trail, and then so those were some good times that I remember from elementary there as well. All right, so let me go ahead and I can go ahead and share here your Wakelet collection. And I did put that link here, guys, in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and grab that. And here we go. We got some stuff here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I want to share too is that you are an author. So let me go ahead and put this here. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this link in here. But tell us a little bit about the types of books that you author and how you got inspired to, go ahead and put out some literature.
Well, in 2015, on a whim, I applied for the School Librarian of the Year. I put in an application. You could apply on your own, and you can get recommendations. So, and I'll tell you, the reason behind that a little later. But I on a whim, I said, okay, I'm going to apply, and I won. I was like, okay, that happened. And I was really stunned. I mean, I found out it was after I returned from ISTE. Kathy Shuka from School Library Journal tweeted me, and I knew she wanted me to write something up about my experience at ISTE. And I said, oh my gosh, I'll get to it. But she's like, no, can you call me? And I'm in my kids are taking swimming lessons. So this is 2015. My kids now are 11, 10, and 8. So back then, what were they? 5, 6, and whatever. And I'm drying them off. They just had their swimming lessons. We're in the locker room. And I was like, well, let me just take the call. And she tells me I won. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So because of that, School Library Journal, it's also a Scholastic Award. So Scholastic had reached out to me because one of the reasons that one of my events on my application was our slime. Now you're like, what is slime? Slime was my vision of having a non-branded maker fair. I know you know Maker Faire, right?
Yes.
So at that time, they had major maker fairs, they had mini maker fairs, and they had school maker fairs, but they didn't have a multi-school maker fair. They didn't have a whole region of just schools getting together for a maker fair. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have it free. I wanted to have everyone. I wanted to throw a party and have everyone come. So it was called Slime, Students of Long Island Maker Expo.
Ah, nice. I love that.
I like that. So because of the award and because of one of the major reasons I won the award, they had reached out to me to write those makerspace books. So I have, if you look on Amazon, I do have 2 sets of makerspace books. One set, the rookies, are for like maybe 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. And then the true books are for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And they are with very simple directions. As a kid, I would go to the library and I would take all these books off the shelves because I love crafts. But the problem was my mother was divorced at the time. And so she was working 2 jobs. She really didn't have the time to sit there and go through these, maker and craft books with me. And my grandparents were immigrants. They came from Ukraine. They instilled in me a very important respect and love for education, but they couldn't help me because they couldn't read the language. They couldn't drive. They couldn't help me with much except basically be their American dream. My grandfather only went up to 4th grade, and my grandmother never went to school. My grandfather taught her how to sign her name for her citizenship papers.
Wow.
So, I was their American dream.
That is amazing. That is an interesting story. So you and I are like in that aspect too, very, very similar, very similar stories as well as, having to, in hindsight, looking back and seeing those obstacles that our parents had to overcome being immigrant parents. And, in your case from the Ukraine, in my case from Mexico, but, they struggle because they want to, help you out. And like you said, you are their American dream. They want to do right by you, but how can they do that? And at that time, I mean, I think they did. My parents, my dad only went to first grade. My mom only got to second grade in Mexico. And so struggling to find resources on how to teach you what's right and what's wrong, how to, what is the proper way to behave, things of that sort. Of course, they instill those values in you, but now here in America, in this culture, how do we go about that? So very interesting stories and things that our parents had to overcome. And, look at you now and look at us now. So that's
Well,
great.
I think we're products of that, of those values and
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of that you just try and you put in your effort and you just stick to it.
Yeah,
If my grandfather was here right now, he'd be like, well, you're just going to have to suck it up. You're just going to have to do it and you're going to have to try. And then, and also, how dare I not take advantage of opportunities that my grandparents didn't have?
exactly.
How dare I do that in this land of opportunity, um, with technology and education? Now, there are issues with equity out there. I will say there
Yes,
are issues with equity, but for the most part, we are very fortunate in this country to have so much. And how dare I not fulfill that dream?
exactly. No, and I agree with you on that on so many aspects. So let's go ahead and just continue. So now your grandparents say, you said you had a liking for crafts and things of that
Right.
sort. So then, now you got into this. And so tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So I would take these books from the library, but
Mhm.
they were difficult. That you didn't have. I didn't even have like maybe some of the resources around the house, or they would say, "Oh, 10 easy crafts for kids," but they weren't. You know what I mean?
Yes,
You
yes.
never remember books back then, they weren't, with these flashy, glossy pages with color and there, lots of words and directions. And as a kid on your own, trying to be independent, you couldn't do a lot. You didn't have YouTube to cheat with, to find out I've used YouTube to learn how to knit. You don't know, you don't know
Yes.
how to do it. So these books are really for kids. There are a lot of the materials are found around the house or they're easy to get. They're not difficult. And kids can sit with their parents and read them and do them, but they could also do them on their own. So it empowers them to be independent learners, to be makers on their own. And I think that's important. So that's why Scholastic had reached out to me. A funny story about the books, the smaller books, the rookie books, all of the pictures in those books, there are pictures of someone, you see hands in all the books and they're
Mhm.
making the crafts. That's my son. My other son did a few of them, but you have to think each book has like three or four projects, three
Mhm.
projects. So 12 in one series and 12 in the other. My sister is a freelance photographer. So we spent hours and days and weeks in her basement photographing
Oh.
those pictures. Go like this, go like this, go like this, go like this. And then, yeah, and then the larger books, they had someone sketch them, so they're diagrams.
Uh-huh.
But all the other, like the covers of the books, the back, all those like the promo part of like kids playing with the activities. They came to my library one day, moved everything out of the way, and I had my kids and their friends in the books. They photographed them for the books. So
Oh, wow.
it was really like a family project,
That
which
is
is kind of cool.
great.
It was kind of cool.
That those are some of the most famous hands now in the family too,
Yeah,
as well, and everything. That is great. Now, Christina, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about exactly what Maker Faire or Maker Movement is for some of our audience members that may not be familiar with the term. Can you just give us a little brief overview? I know right now you told us
sure.
you're kind of creating, doing stuff on your own, but if you can go just through your experience and through your lens, what is a Maker Movement?
I find it right now that, the pendulum swings back and forth.
Mhm.
And excuse me, the maker movement, I really think is, we think of things as trends and buzzwords, but the maker movement has been around since the dawn of time, since the very first person made fire. That is the maker movement. You find a problem and you try to develop a solution. And so when maker movement for me growing up was going into my grandparents' garage and just grabbing a hammer and nails and tinkering. It was going into my grandmother's sewing room and grabbing some fabric and some needle and thread. The maker movement is a movement of people. It's not a movement of things. It's a movement of
Ah,
people. So right now there is a huge maker movement going on. If you look in some Facebook groups and on Twitter, what are people making right now? Well, they're making a difference because they're making PPE. They're either 3D printing the straps, or they're making face shields, or they're sewing masks. My friend Melissa Tom is actually we're going to have a presentation, a little webinar in a few weeks, and what she's doing is she's sewing masks. And whenever you buy one of the masks, she takes the first amount of the money and she uses that for the supplies. And whatever's left over, she purchases books to donate.
Oh, okay.
So she's giving back in more than one way. She's giving back by having people, buy the mask and being safe. And she's also donating the profits to spreading literacy. So that's the maker movement. It is truly finding a problem and making a solution. So places like Instructables is a great website where people are making things. It's tinkering. My grandfather, he had a belt and he must have fixed it like 3 times with duct tape, because you know what? He came from a place of you don't throw things away. He came from that time of being very frugal and fixing things. He came from a world where it wasn't just disposable. You did what you had to do. And I tell you, when my grandparents passed away, my grandmother passed away in 2000, my grandfather passed away in 2006. They didn't leave much, but my grandfather left a suitcase full of zippers, and my grandmother left jars and jars of buttons. And that's what I remember. It was just going around and tinkering, and I think our kids need to do that now. My kids have been in front of the computer screen for months. I love technology. I adore it. But I really wish there was more balance, because I like my kids to tinker. My son loves making stop animation movies. He's using technology, but he's making something.
Yeah.
My son just got this huge Lego set, and he's making, Batman. I want my kids to have hands-on experiences, because when you feel that physicality, there's more of a connection. It's almost like, handwriting. You feel the connection with learning to your head. And in my Wakelet, you'll see a bunch of ideas that people can make things with their hearts and donate them. So especially now, again, the maker movement is huge, because we're trying to find solutions to our problems.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think that there's something to be said about that, that tactile, just being able to feel something. And I know for myself, being a reader, a lot of my classmates say, why are you purchasing the books? You can find them online and you can do that. And I said, I know I can. But the thing is like, I can't, like you said, it's that connection. Like, I love to buy my books. I love to flip through the pages, highlight, underline, because like you said, it's that connection from hand to mind to brain, and everything's connecting, and you're really internalizing the concepts, because on a screen, you just don't have that touch. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. I mean, there's people that can learn that way, but I'm just one of those that I'm multimodal learner. Like, I got to touch it. I got to see it. I got to feel it. And just even if it smells like that new book smell,
yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
That new book smell. I just got a shipment of books now for my new courses that I'll be taking in the fall. And they just came in, and I'm just dying to open them and then just get that fresh new book smell and just start, going through them and everything. But it really, growing up the same way, at home, we didn't have, like I said, growing up, maybe at the same time we both grew up, not a lot of tech. I just had to go and tinker. My mom was a seamstress for years, self-taught seamstress. So where we lived, it was a citrus farm where my dad worked, and he was there, the kind of like the ranch hand, I guess you can call it. And so my mom was a seamstress, and then so she would fix, the jeans for the workers there, dresses for the wives, do some hems, a little bit of zipper work, things of that sort. So I grew up with spools and spools of yarn and thread, and then buttons, and and then what I would do is, since there was a little garage there for all the tractors and all the workers, I would go and sneak into that garage. I mean, I'm like 5 years old, and I mean, you're talking, they have grinders, they've got all sorts of sharp stuff and
And
things
we
that
were
are very
okay.
dangerous.
And we were
Yes.
okay.
And we were okay. And they were dangerous. And I'd go in there. My mom, like, she wouldn't know that I kind of snuck out the house. But of course, it was a ranch. Everything was enclosed. So, my mom was working. I'd say, I'm going to go outside, but I'd make my way over there. And then I'd get those hammers and,
Yes.
and just have so much fun being creative and, getting my hands dirty on that and just coming back and saying, look, mom, look what I built. Mira lo que hice con esto. And my mom's like, ay, mijo. And, just like shocked. And, but it was a great time because everything was hands-on. And today, there is a lot of hands-on activity. Some of the favorite things that I got to do when I was still in the classroom was I would implement technology, but it was more of the hands-on technology too, where thanks to Donors Choose and thanks to our parent
Oh,
support that
yes.
we had there, I've got some makey kits.
Hmm.
So we would use the makey kits for our science class and our labs. So then we would tie that to Scratch. So then I would tell students, I was like, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and I want you guys to come up with a program to show me if something is magnetic or non-magnetic. So you can do it on Scratch. But, we're going to go ahead and bring in physical objects and items and see if they work. I remember one day I saw a project that they did there on the Makey webpage where it would do measuring. So we put in some paper clips. Everything was done with paper
Hmm.
clips and things that we had. So the kids made it, as they poured water in there, the Makey kit would do its readings into the Scratch program and tell you the bottle is at 1/4, the bottle is at 1/2. So we're introducing the math, we're introducing the science, we're introducing the programming, but we also have the hands-on maker approach, problem solving, things of that sort. And those students just, had a blast. I mean, we weren't going off of the curriculum pathway.
Right.
We were just tying everything in together, just, cross curricular way. So I really have seen firsthand what, having that hands-on approach has. And even with tying it to technology, everything doesn't have to be just on the computer. You can
Right.
tie things in together. And so I think that that's great. And so I really encourage a lot of our teachers and students and anybody that may be looking or watching us today. I really encourage you to try and tie some of those things in. I know that our curriculum sometimes is very strict, but there's ways that you can implement those things where you're touching on several units that you may be going over, several things that have to be covered, for example, in our TEKS, but you're bringing them in one great project that is hands-on and it's going to be fun. And the students will remember that learning because they'll remember the experience. So that's what I
Exactly.
love. So tell us a little bit about that, like the experiences that you've seen from your students as they, do these projects.
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened with my children this time during these months. I was getting upset. I was getting upset. They were constantly on the screen, and one of my goals was to become Makey certified. And so I saw that Tom Heck was doing a pilot, and they
Yes.
were doing it online. And I said, perfect, because I've been wanting to go, but I could never get the time to go. So I applied for it, got into it, and it was fabulous. It was a boot camp. It was over a couple of days, and it was a lot of work because we had to write an instructable. So if you go on Instructables and find my name, my sister, and I've never had a Lego set. I've never had a Lego kit of my own. So my sister got me one that was a pop-up book. So I actually made the pop-up book, and then I had it when you move the different figures, it would talk. And that was my final project. And so that's up on Instructables. But I share all these things with my students, but I don't know everything. A lot of kids learn on their own. And I finally got the feeling of what it was like to learn. And Tom Heck was a phenomenal teacher. And so my one son likes to code. So I had him show me how to use Scratch with the Makey. My daughter did she made like the little drawing, and then we used the pencil and we used the Makey. And then my other son had to do a project on Louisiana. And so he was one of the assignments was to make the stamp of make his own
Mhm.
design his own stamp and explain it. So we made an interactive poster with the makey makey. So it was a time where I actually got to be a kid and I
Yes.
got to interact with my kids.
Yes.
So
I
they taught me. I love that.
that right there to me is one of the most memorable experiences that I had as a teacher, in the sense of, oftentimes, we teach, or students will see us as those subject matter experts, like we know everything. And sometimes as teachers, we like to say or feel like, yeah, we know everything. But one of the best things and one of my most memorable learning experiences was learning from my students,
Mm.
because I'm a big thinker. My wife says, you really go above and beyond. Like, when you think that you can find a solution, just a simple, you want to take that simple solution but make it better, and you add so many layers. Because to me, I feel like there's so many ways to view things. So with me, when I started integrating technology, I think it was my fifth year at this particular school, elementary. I started introducing some coding and some of the scratch coding. Now, I didn't know anything about it. I learned a little bit. So what I did is I took the little that I had and just shared it with my students. And then my students were just great. Some of them were like, oh, I got this. And so they started doing things, and I was learning from them. So the first class came in, I kind of gave them, like, here's the little that I know, but let's go ahead and tie it into the curriculum. And they would go to town. I would learn from them. So my second class would come in, and now I'm looking like a lot like an expert. And then by the time the third class came in, man, I was like, here, guys, let's go ahead and do this. And we would take it to another level. But I think that that's something that's very important, that sometimes we have that attitude of the sage on the stage. And then when we're that guide on the side, but actually take part of the learning with our students, something magical happens. And I got to experience that my last 5 years. And those are the most memorable 5 years that I've had in teaching, where I'm learning with my students and they're engaged, because we're a team, we're a community, and it's just not me, here you go, consume this, consume this, consume this. But no, let's be, producers. Let's go ahead and produce some learning artifacts. Let's go ahead and create and do all of those things. And I think that that's something that you touched on that I think could resonate. It resonates for a lot of educators, and maybe for some that may be struggling and seeing like, let's build some community. When you take part of the learning with your students, it really builds that community. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and that really resonates with me.
Well, a lot of teachers will come because now I'm an ed tech librarian, so I help teachers integrate technology into their lessons. So I am not the traditional librarian of the books and the processing and circulation and book talks. I'm more of the techie librarian part,
Mhm.
and so I feel like when my kids teach me something, and also when I learn from other teachers on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, and I find something. I love that feeling of I've learned something. I love that feeling. And so I want my kids to feel like that. So right now I'm teaching a virtual maker camp. I was asked on a Tuesday if I could start on one on a Wednesday. And I'm one of those people that I will try anything. And I will say yes more often than I say no. And I'm like, sure, I could do that. I'm like, how am I going to do this? So what's my go-to? I went to Wakelet. Oh, and it was on architecture, by the way. So
Oh,
let's teach architecture the very next day. Okay, with kids I've never met before, virtually, and they've got paper and pencils and glue and scissors at home. Okay. So what I do, I went on Wakelet. I created a Wakelet. I'm still adding to it. I'm adding resources. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna do it with a Wakelet. But now how can I just that's a resource, but now I want to have, oh yeah, that's my project.
yes.
That took forever. Took forever, but I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, so I want to thank Diana Wendell. She, I guess maybe on Facebook, or she looked it
Oh,
up. So she put it in the comments. So I just kind of popped it up here, and just to share that with you. So sorry to interrupt,
oh
what
no.
you're saying, but like I said, this is what we were talking about, and this is on Instructables, and I did pop that link in there on that. So that's wonderful. All right,
Thank
so go
you.
ahead. Yeah, you're telling us about your projects. I'm really
Oh,
excited too, because I feel the same way as you, where I'm not sure how it's going to work yet, but we're going to make it happen.
I'll figure it out. I mean, I'll figure it out. So I was like, well, now I have the Wakelet. That's great. But what's the lesson? What's the lesson? So I've been using Nearpod at work, but I used Nearpod on my own. I looked at my account. My personal account was 2012. But I didn't have Nearpod in my former district, so I really didn't use it that often. And in my new district, I am using my teacher account. So I said, let me go back to that. Let me see what that's all about. So I went to Nearpod and I I used the virtual field trips because they have
Yeah.
great images. And so I put those in for, and actually, this is my Wakelet if anyone wants to look at it, my Nearpod. So it has images, all around the world, and I put them in an order. And I started seeing patterns myself that towers are very popular, pyramids are very popular, palaces. And I started showing kids that there were connections between like St. Basil's Cathedral with the onion domes to the Taj Mahal. And my kids were finding connections. So that was one part of it. And then I love Bunsey. So I threw Bunsey in there and had the kids research on a structure or a monument and had them create their own Bunsey. And then the next part was a Nearpod actual package lesson about structures and architecture. I took that. I took a few things out, like the filler slides, and then I put in the Wakelet with all the resources, and then I threw in a flip grid at the end for the kids to respond. And, it's a very small group, but I had a 7-year-old in Chicago. She'd never used Tinkercad before. And I said, oh, just try out Tinkercad. Next thing you know, she's sharing her screen. She's showing me what she made in Tinkercad. I'm like, oh my gosh, with the little blocks.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is amazing. So I'm learning from the kids how to be a better teacher.
Yes. And I think that that's great that you touch on that too, because I mean, we can learn from them because they're the ones that are giving us the feedback. So that way you can mold your lessons, adapt and overcome if there are any obstacles, see what may work. And, one of the things that I've learned too is that it's okay to fail in front of them, because they see that, oh, wow, okay, things don't go right. And then you just go to plan B and they see like, okay, you adapt and overcome. And that's always been my motto. And so then the students, I would have that happen in the classroom where I'd be teaching something and then something would just go wrong. And then they'd be like, it's okay, Mr. Mendoza, adapt and overcome. We got this. Let's go. And then they just kind of remind me and they'd say, hey, how about we try this? And it's just magical, and again, you just learn from them. And I think that's been one of some of the best experiences. And even now as an instructional technologist, learning from the teachers and seeing things from the teacher lens and no longer working with students, that can only help improve anyone's practice as well. Because in the end, we want to make sure that those tools and the learning that's taking place is also going to end up in the hands of the students, and everybody can be connected there as well. So that's something that's wonderful, and I love that you shared that. And I did share your Wakelet there again, and that way we can do that. And so I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Like I'm really pumped up with this conversation because, like you said, a lot of the students, they really get inspired. And like you said, that one particular student that just took Tinkercad and they just go off on it. Many students learn in different ways, and sometimes I think we forget that it's not a unimodal world where students all learn the same. It's multimodal. So when you give them options, when you give them a choice, and you give them a voice in their learning, just throwing in some Flipgrid lingo there, giving student voice and choice and amplify student voice, you're still going to get that learning artifact. You're still going to be able to see if students are understanding what you're teaching and things of that sort. And so some of the memories that I had as well is, we would do a lot of our projects were project-based learning. And with social studies and science, it really lent itself to that, just because those were the two subjects that I taught. But I know that you can bring it into all subjects. So a lot of the times it was me giving the students a rubric and a choice to say, okay, in class, you can either do a Google slide presentation, which you will present in front of the class. If you'd like, you can go ahead and do your own little research and do like a screencastify, where you do an explanation, or you create a tutorial for the class for our units. But they all had a little specific rubric. And then, so you saw that students that felt more comfortable with group presentations, they would go up there. Then you had the other students that were more like, I want to do it on screencastify. But then what you started seeing that community be built in where they're like, hey, come join our group and come be part of our group. And then everybody has a little, place within the project where maybe somebody's not a great speaker, so they'll be the ones recording. Maybe somebody is, whatever it is that they're good at, they would go ahead and put their part in there. And it was just something that's great. And they just take off from there. And so I just wanted to share that because it kind of goes along those lines where the students just, they get excited. And I love that they get excited.
Well, listening to you speak, it really, we're talking about technology, we're talking about the maker movement, but we're also transitioning now to social emotional learning, because when kids feel good about their learning, they feel good about themselves.
Yes.
We have to give them the opportunities to fail and the opportunities to sail. Second attempt at learning. We have to
There you
second
go.
attempt at learning. Yeah, we have to give them structure. We have to give them choice. We have to give them balance, but we have to support them so they can have. It's not that feeling of failure. It's a feeling of just not quite yet. That growth mindset. And again,
Yes.
it's also like you and I when we were growing up. So if the hammer, we hit the nail and it didn't go in the wood right, we get another hammer. We would do something else. I don't know. We would try. We were okay with experimenting. We weren't
Yes.
tested on it. It was play. It was fun, but we were learning. We were empowered. Our parents didn't know back then that we were given voice and choice. I just think over the years that we've been more, become more teacher driven because of data and tests. And
Yes.
so because of that, we feel like, oh my gosh, we have to make sure that all these kids are packaged completely correctly so they can take the test. There is a lot more than test taking. I mean, if you look at my Wakelet, there's a whole reading log. You could do a Wakelet reading log. You can not just talk about a book, but you can put in videos about the book. You don't have to make those videos. You can make them. You can make a stop animation. You can make a Tinkercad model and put that in your Wakelet reading portfolio, but you don't have to. So let's say if I'm reading a book, I can find related videos or related memes or related images, articles, and that's my learning portfolio. I think that's where we need to go. We need to go to more portfolio work with rubrics and expectations than all of these, yes, no, here's a, bubble in the question and those, bubble in the answer and those kinds of things. That's how we become more creative and innovative.
I agree with you. And I think it'll also prepare students even for higher education, because at least through my experience, a lot of the courses, it's portfolio based. It's not necessarily just comprehensive, like where you're just like, hey, just like you said, bubble in and so on. But a lot of the coursework, and especially, in at least in the programs that I was in with EdTech, everything was portfolio based. And at the end, you're submitting your portfolio. You're not taking a comprehensive exam.
Right.
All your projects are in that portfolio. And at the end, there's an evaluation, how everything went and so on. They give you some feedback. But like you said, it gives them the ability. I like what you said. You can either put videos in, they've got that choice, something that is related to them, where it'll trigger that memory, it'll trigger that learning, and it's being internalized. It cues them to those experiences that they can just maybe see a meme and say, oh, you know what, that meme reminds me of this that we covered in this class, and this is what we learned, and so on. Because you're making that connection visually.
Right.
And now it's more of, here's this practice handout, let's get ready. We've got a state exam that's coming. Here's another handout. Here's another booklet.
Right.
And you kind of lose that sense of that. And then students just, they get tired, their minds just get really tired, that by the time the state test comes, they've seen so much, and sometimes they may do well, sometimes they may not do well. And the last thing I want is, I don't want students to feel that those tests define who they are, or that those tests define, the learning that did take place, because it's, to me, there's much more to just the state testing, and state testing doesn't measure all aspects of student learning.
Exactly. Well, and so you think about which subjects are given the most focus on in schools. It's going to be your core subjects, because why? because
Hmm.
mostly because they're tested. And so you have the arts and the music and the physical education, and you have your libraries,
Yes.
which are not tested, but those subjects support everything else. And those are really portfolio based. If you're going to go to college for music, you're going to have an audition or music or a dance or
Hmm.
whatever, or you're going to have a portfolio. If you're going to go for history or math, you're really not bringing in a portfolio. You're looking at scores, but it really should be portfolio based. That's my fear now because now that we've gone with this remote learning, and I'll be honest with you, my kids have spent so much time on their core subjects that they didn't have time to look at, some of the wonderful projects that their special area teachers were making for them because I
Hmm.
have three kids. I'm working and I have three kids that I have to help, that I had to focus on the core only. And I feel badly about that because I looked at all the wonderful things and I wish they had, had more time to do those wonderful things. And I think they would have been happier, but I had to make sure that those core subjects were completed all the time because that's where the grades came from. But I wish there was, let's make interdisciplinary projects. I want to see more cross connections. Uh, you and I know from our background how we can integrate technology so it becomes almost hands-on.
Right.
But a lot of teachers, they were thrown into this. Our last day was March 13th, and on Monday it was let's start teaching
Yeah.
remotely. Now I've been teaching remotely. I teach professional development. I've been teaching for like 12 years online. I've used Moodle, I've used Blackboard, I've used a variety of things, but it's a lot different than teaching, in class. And so maybe the high school teachers that I work with, maybe that was easier for them to transition because they're using Canvas and Google Classroom. But elementary school teachers, they are so hands-on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they really had enough training. It was very quick. And again, the equity issue. You've got kids who don't even have devices. So you have a wonderful librarian, Casey Boyd. She's amazing. And what she did was she started doing lessons on YouTube. So you wouldn't have to worry about getting into the learning management system. It was on YouTube.
Hmm.
And there were people who had TV shows because that was more accessible. So she is amazing, amazing. So, but librarians and these special areas, we support kids' hearts. We could, and for some kids who don't like school, that's where they're coming. They're
Yeah.
coming for the special areas. If I had one child and I wasn't working, I would be playing all day long. I could not. And I feel so badly about that. So when that Makey Makey project came along and I was able to play with my kids and learn, I was so excited. And that's what I wish it had been more of. But, the teachers did what they could. They, my one daughter, she got, links to websites and things like that. And so she was learning, but it was when I heard my son's teacher's voice, I said, "Did you miss that Google Meet?" He's like, "No, my teacher recorded the math lesson." That was good because it wasn't like going to a YouTube video or anything. It was personalized. It was her voice. She could
Yes.
say to the kids their names, that was important, and but I wish there had been more of, you're reading the story, now go make something. Right now I'm reading, now I actually have time to read over the summer, and I've been reading The Wild Robot, which I read with my kids and I loved. And now we're reading The Wild Robot, no, The Robot Escapes. And you look it up, there are a ton of activities, and it's about this robot who survives in the wild. So it is perfect for hands-on learning. It is perfect for making connections. Take the literature, give the kids choice for hands-on, give the kids some tech tools, and have them make something to prove what they learned. Stop with the testing. But in remote learning, a lot of us didn't have those tools. We didn't know how to transfer that project-based learning to remote. Just didn't know how. So I'm hoping, I don't know what the fall is going to bring here, but I'm hoping the second time around, because I think it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
I'm in New York, we were in the hot spot for a while. who knows what the fall is going to look like. I hope we learned our lessons. I hope we learned the lesson that technology is not everything. Technology is a tool. Having kids just go on websites and answer questions is not it. It's those teachers who record their lessons and who have the Google Meets and have the morning check-ins. Those kids, I think, were happier.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said, it's just for students, school is a social area. They get to see their friends, they get to see their teachers. And then, being at home, you're not seeing,
They were
your
sick of me.
friends.
They were
They're
sick
not
of me.
they're not seeing their friends, they're not seeing their teachers. So when a teacher would have a meeting, I agree with you. It's like, and get to see their students. It's just, and then the students are all in the meet, those that can, and they get to see their friends, and it really it's a great way for them to again interact and just feel still part of the group, being isolated. And one of the comments I wanted to share with that is about 3 weeks ago, I had Pedro Aparicio, who's an educator in Mexico City, and he's a Google innovator. And his project, even before all of this took off, was connected classrooms. And, what he would do with his lessons is in school, if they were going over a certain, let's say Spanish explorers, but then there's a school in Peru that's doing the same lesson, they would connect. So that was in school, but now what he said is now through this time of remote learning, you're still able to do those things. But one of the things that he noticed was that his class got a lot closer during this time when he would have those morning check-ins, because over there, he said they'd have to wear uniforms at school. But now here at home, they might have like a favorite t-shirt, their soccer jersey, or they see their pets.
Right.
And so
Yes,
now
the
they're
pets. Yep.
interacting. Yeah, they're interacting at a personal level of asking like, hey, you know what? I didn't know you like that team. Tell me who your favorite player is. Or, hey, do you want to share, the name of your pet, your mascot, things of that sort. And he said that he noticed that there was a difference in the classroom because even the parents were involved. The parents were sitting there with the students as they were doing a lesson, and it just became a really tight community. And so that was one of his experiences that he had over there that I thought was a positive experience, that we can find those positives
Yes.
during this time that I know it's difficult and a lot of teachers may feel unprepared and the uncertainty that we're going through. But let's not forget the students that, right now is the time that they need that additional support and they need that socializing. And so I think it's great that if you can just check in with them, you're definitely making their day.
Right. And that's why, librarians and libraries are so important right now. I mean,
Yes.
we have been on the forefront because, again, at technology, when people don't know how to use technology, it's funny. And I know you know this, Alfonso. I know you know this. You try to present a tool or a website that you just found, and people are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like a couple of months later, a year later, they're like, oh, Alfonso, did you hear about this?
Yeah.
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 Do you
Yeah.
remember that email I sent you last year?
Mm-hmm.
But it's people learn it at their own time when they need to learn it.
Exactly.
So libraries are librarians are those silent heroes, where we're working, we do all those things, and we're integrating technology and we're sharing the databases, copyright, all those things. But it takes something like this to really make people realize, wow, I really did need to know that. I really did need to know about plagiarism and copyright issues and how to engage my students online, and just even, can you help me, there's Sue Kowalski is a wonderful librarian, and she called herself the Mad Chatter. And what she would do is she would just go into, she would ask teachers, would you like me to go into, your Google Meet with you? And she would monitor the chat so the teacher could teach. And so she would monitor, and she was called herself the Mad Chatter. And that was how she was supporting, we, as librarians, we support everyone, and it is the place of equity. Ebooks, print books. If you need something, for special needs or English language learners, the library is the hub. And so librarians are the hub. We are the
Yep.
great connectors. And sometimes people forget that because it's like, it's like, that boyfriend, that guy or girl that you meet one time, you're like, oh, that's a really nice person, but I want to go find someone else. I'm going to go date a few people. And what
Mhm.
happens? You go back to that first person, and you're like, you know what? They really were a nice person, and I really fell in love with them. You don't realize that until you go out and there in the world, and you date all those other people, and then you come back and you go, you know what? That was the person for me, and that's what the library is. We're always there. We're always waiting. We're very loyal, and we're waiting for you to come back.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. That's something that's definitely important. And I know I've seen in our district that our libraries are just jam-packed full of kids. And so that to me is just something that is amazing because our librarians are doing an amazing job at just being able to help the students before school, after school, either through reading, finding books, and doing all that extra learning. And to me, I've always thought the libraries, that hub, that centralized hub, that heart of the school, because it's
Yes.
right in the center. I mean, to me, and right now when you were talking about that, I remember when I was in elementary, my librarian, Miss Ibarra, if she's listening, I don't know if she is, but want to give her a shout out because she was the kindest person in the whole wide world. Because, like you said, she was there from the very early morning when my parents would have to drop me off very off early. She was one of the first ones there, and so my mom would say, "Hey, can you take care of him before so I was there and I would help her shelve books. And then at the end of the day, when my parents got out really extra late to work, she was there. But I learned so much. And she was always, my fondest memories of her were that she was always mindful of everybody, gave everybody their time, helped everybody out. And so I think that, a lot of times we, like you said, we don't realize the great and wonderful heart that we have within our schools and within our districts. So, I mean, I really love that. And so those are some of my fondest memories too, as well, being in the library.
Yeah, I think we really take it for granted because it's always there. But, in our public libraries, when we had Hurricane Sandy on Long Island, you
Mhm.
know, people lost their homes. Where did you go for your internet? You went to the library. After World War II, when people came back from the wars, where did you go to look for a job? You went to your local library. You learned how to write a resume. You learned about computers. Immigrants coming from other countries. Where do you go to learn English? You go to the
The
library.
library.
The library is there. It's always there, and it's for everyone. And I think that's what's so important. And so that's why it really upsets me when I see that school librarians, some schools are firing or getting rid of their school librarians because they say, oh, well, there's no need, and especially in remote learning. Well, if you don't have the library, what are you? I'm a librarian without my library. There's a wealth of knowledge in me and
Yes.
and me as a person that I can help you and I can support you.
Yes, that is awesome. That is a great statement. I think I'm going to definitely take that snip right there, and that'll be my preview for the podcast because that is awesome. Oh my goodness, this has been just a wonderful, wonderful conversation, Christina. Thank you so much for being here. And guys, I did put the Wakelet in there that Christina shared. She's sharing some great resources. I'm going to go ahead and pop this in here one more time in the chat. Also, keep in mind that you can go ahead and find her books on Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that link in here also shortly. Here we go. That way you guys can go ahead and check her out and follow her on Twitter at Librarian. All right, at Librarian. So pretty easy. Go ahead and follow her. Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Christina, it was a pleasure meeting with you. And guys, I just wanted talking to Christina backstage and just letting her know the purpose of the show is to have great guests like Christina and all the guests that have been here on the show, but for you as our audience members to see these guests as not only those subject matter experts that they are, but see them as a resource and for you to be able to connect with them. This is a world where we should all be connecting, being a connected educator. Like I said, be part of our PLF, our professional learning family, where we can grow together during this time. And us as teachers, educators, even other librarians that may need resources, that you can reach out to these wonderful people like Christina and all the other resources teachers and librarians that have joined us in the chat today. Connect with them. They have some great ideas. And just like Christina said, they're a wealth of knowledge. They know how how to help you with your classes if you're doing research, and not just for that, in all types of areas, they can really help you and add that additional layer to your coursework. And so it's something that is amazing. So thank you so much, Kristina, for being
Thank you
here.
so much.
And
I had a wonderful conversation. I learned so much about you.
and I learned so much about you, and I love that, we come from similar upbringings and everything like that. And again, that's the whole purpose of the show, getting to know just some spectacular people and being able to, connect you with others that may need some help, or connect with others that maybe we can continue learning, because, the learning never stops. So guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. This show obviously is on our YouTube channel. It'll be live and it'll be there. Go ahead and give us a like on our YouTube channel. Also, we are now streaming live on 4 places. Of course, we've got YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, and we're waiting for one more. We haven't heard a response back yet, and hopefully they'll let us through. But right now we're up to 4 locations where you can go ahead and find our shows. So go ahead and give us a like, subscribe to our channels. Go ahead and look at our past interviews. We are going to be having some guests also in Spanish, because again, there are a lot of Spanish speaking educators out there that need resources during this time. And next week, we will have a special guest, which will be Q the librarian. I know she was here in the chat today, and we're going to be talking some more library talk, chat, more tech talks, and ways that we can integrate some of those resources through remote learning. So I'm really excited about that and looking forward to next week's show. So don't forget to join us. All right. Every Saturday, we're here for you. We're here at your service. And if you are ever interested in, joining our show and being a guest, if you have a great idea, something that is, and it doesn't have to be something wonderful, spectacular, because sometimes you feel like, well, this person was on and they shared that. No, maybe it's something that is, for you, a project, something that's helping your immediate community, your students, and something that is, like I said, you're seeing some results, go ahead, drop me a line, DM me. We can schedule that. And like I said, my channel is always open for wonderful guests that want to share. And this is your platform, so you can connect with other educators as well. All right, guys. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're signing off. And don't forget, my friends, stay techie.